Rain slid down the glass as Serene sat alone, her red dress bright against the dim café. She checked her phone again, 5 times in 20 minutes. Brandon walked in, shaking water from his jacket. His eyes landed on her. For a moment his smile flickered. Then his face hardened. "I didn't know you were actually handicapped," he said, voice sharp enough to cut through the hum of the room. Serene's hand tightened around her glass. Her knuckles turned pale. She lifted her chin steady but trembling inside. "I told you," she answered softly. "I have hearing loss." Brandon leaned back, scoffing. "That's not what I signed up for." The cafe seemed to pause. Conversations faltered. A few heads turned. Heat pressed behind Serene's eyes, but she refused to break. At the corner, a new waiter stood still, tray in hand, watching. His name tag read Harlan. As a child, Serene learned early what cruelty sounded like. The taunts came sharp and quick on the schoolyard. Kids tugged at their ears, mimicking her hearing aids. They whispered words they knew she could not catch, then laughed when she asked them to repeat. She learned to sit straighter even when her heart bent. She learned to carry silence like armor. But deep inside she promised herself she would not let their smallness define her worth. Books became her refuge. She read until the pages blurred. She studied late into the night, chasing grades no one could mock. Each score, each certificate was proof. Proof that her mind could never be measured by the volume of her hearing. Years later, she wore a white coat. The letters on her badge read, "Pediatric Nurse." Children clung to her hands. They trusted her because she listened with more than her ears. She saw fear in their eyes and knew how to calm it. She showed them her hearing aids like a secret. A small device that meant different is not broken. Outside the hospital, though, she remained alone. Friends married, built families, filled photo albums. Serene told herself she was fine. Her work mattered. Her patients mattered. But the nights were long. She signed up for the blind date because she still believed in more. Not in perfection, but in connection. She wanted someone who would see her, not her hearing loss. Someone who could meet her in the silence and not run from it. Hope carried her into the cafe that night. Hope, fragile but fierce, beating against years of rejection. She wanted to believe she was worthy of love. At first, Brandon smiled as he slid into the booth. He took off his jacket with a flourish as if arriving was already a gift. "You look nice," he said, glancing at her dress before signaling for a menu. The words landed flat. His eyes were already elsewhere. Serene thanked him, trying to hold the thread of hope. Maybe nerves made him curt. Maybe the rain had soured his mood. But Brandon's mask slipped quickly. He scrolled through his phone while she spoke. The screen's glow lit his face more than her presence did. He nodded without listening, gave short answers, and checked his watch like the evening was an inconvenience. He leaned back, spreading his arms across the booth. His voice grew casual, careless. "So, how bad is it, really?" "Your hearing thing." The phrasing cut. He said it like she carried a burden he might have to tolerate, like he was already weighing the cost of patience against the effort of staying. Serene steadied herself. She answered with grace, as she always did. Yet Brandon barely reacted. He placed his phone face up on the table, fingers tapping notifications while she spoke of her work with children. Every gesture betrayed him. The empty smile, the restless hands, the glance at other women walking past. The gallant act was gone. What remained was indifference polished into arrogance, and Serene, sitting across from him, felt the familiar sting of being treated as less. Harlan Cole had built the cafe chain from a single corner shop. For years, he poured his time into quality beans, clean counters, and warm service. Now, with dozens of locations, he worried the spirit was fading. That was why he wore the apron tonight. No one in this branch knew who he was. To them, he was a late hire, a middle-aged man needing extra shifts. He wanted to see with his own eyes how staff treated guests. He wanted to feel the room the way customers felt it. He balanced a tray of cups, moving between tables, listening more than speaking. The hum of chatter, the clink of plates, he filed it away. It was his way of measuring if the place still held the soul he imagined years ago. Then he heard Brandon's voice. The sharp edge cut across the café. He glanced up, saw the man leaning back, phone glowing on the table. He saw Serene sitting smaller than she deserved, fingers wrapped around her glass, her dignity pressed thin. Harlan's chest tightened. Each word from Brandon felt heavier than the last. Words that were not careless, but cruel. He set down a tray too hard, cups rattling. His hand curled against the wood. He forced himself to breathe to keep the disguise. He told himself this was why he came undercover. To witness the truth unfiltered. To see not just the service of his staff, but the humanity of his customers. But watching Serene, something inside him shifted. This was no longer research. This was no longer a quiet test of standards. It was a man watching another human being torn down for a difference that should never have been shame. And his hand, still pressed to the tray, shook with the urge to step forward. Serene had already waited 45 minutes before Brandon arrived. She kept glancing at the clock on the wall, telling herself traffic was heavy in the rain. Each minute pulled her hope thinner, but she held on. She had promised herself not to give up too quickly. When Brandon finally walked in, her relief was fragile, a candle flickering in the storm. She straightened her posture, smoothed her dress, and welcomed him with a smile. She tried to guide the evening with conversation. She spoke about her work at the hospital, the children she cared for, how some of them learned simple signs from her, how they laughed when she showed them her hearing aids touching their own ears in wonder. Her voice softened when she spoke of one boy who refused to take medicine until she taught him the sign for brave. He held the word in his hands and swallowed his fear. For a moment, she almost forgot where she was. She saw their faces in her mind, children who trusted her, not because she heard perfectly, but because she understood their silence. Brandon cut across her words with a smirk. "So, you're some kind of wonder nurse. Graduated with honors. Kids adore you. That's impressive." He leaned closer, his tone sharp. "But still, you're like this." The sting hit harder than the rain outside. Serene's breath caught, but she steadied herself. She lifted her chin and met his gaze. Her lips curved in a calm smile that cost her more than he could know. "Yes," she said, "I am like this, and I am proud of it." Brandon leaned back, scoffing as if her dignity was an inconvenience. He pulled out his phone again, tapping the screen. His chair scraped the floor as he began to rise. "I don't think this is going to work," he muttered. Serene's hand stilled on her glass. The candle of hope flickered out. At the corner, Harlan's grip on his tray tightened, his eyes locked on the man preparing to walk away. The air in the café shifted heavy with the pause before something broke. Brandon's laugh cracked through the café. It wasn't warm or nervous. It was sharp, loud, and deliberate. Heads turned from nearby tables. "You really thought this would work out," he said, waving a hand toward Serene as if she were a mistake printed on a menu. "A blind date with someone like you. Unreal." Serene froze. Her cheeks flushed hot, a mix of anger and shame. She tightened her grip on the edge of the table. Her voice stayed inside, pressed down by the weight of every eye turning toward her. A couple in the corner frowned. Another diner shook his head, but a group of young men near the window chuckled under their breath, hiding smiles behind their cups. Brandon enjoyed it. He leaned forward, raising his voice, making sure the room heard. "Look, you're a nice person, maybe, but I can't spend my life repeating myself babysitting, making sure you catch every word. That's exhausting. Who would want that?" The cafe's hum dropped. A hush spread, broken only by the scrape of silverware. People tried not to stare, but curiosity pulled their eyes back. Serene swallowed hard. She felt the heat behind her eyes, but she would not let tears fall. She straightened her spine. Her body shook, but her dignity held. Brandon wasn't finished. He gestured at her with his phone. "This is why people should be honest. You said you had some hearing loss. I thought that meant normal, like asking for repeats in a noisy bar. Not this." His voice carried dripping with contempt. A woman at the next table shifted uncomfortably. She murmured something to her partner, glancing at Serene with pity. The pity hurt almost as much as the cruelty. Serene's heart pounded. She wanted to disappear, to melt into the floor, to be invisible to every stranger now measuring her worth through his words. Yet she forced herself to meet Brandon's eyes. Her lips parted, but the words stuck. Brandon smirked, satisfied. "Honestly, you should have just said you're handicapped. Saved me the trouble." Gasps broke from two tables nearby. One man muttered, "That's low." Another shook his head, disgust clear on his face, but laughter rippled from the corner group again. Not everyone defended her. Not everyone cared. Serene clenched her jaw. Her nails pressed half-moons into her palm under the table. She refused to cry. She would not give him the victory of her tears. Her silence was not weakness. It was armor. Yet inside her chest felt hollow. The hopeful voice that had carried her into the café was gone, drowned by humiliation. At the counter, Harlan's tray trembled in his hand. Porcelain rattled against metal. His jaw set hard as he watched. He wanted to step in to end the cruelty, but his cover still held him back. Brandon stood taller, proud of his performance. He glanced around the café as though collecting applause, mistaking the uneasy silence for agreement. Serene forced her lips into a small, steady line. She lifted her chin, not to challenge him, but to protect what little strength she had left. Her eyes burned, but no tear fell. The café, waited breath held for what would come next. Serene straightened in her chair. Her shoulders squared her spine, rigid, every muscle working against the weight pressing down on her. Her fingers loosened from the glass. She placed both hands on the table, steady and calm. She refused to shrink any smaller. Her voice, when it came, was low but firm. "Hearing loss does not define me. It never has. It never will." Brandon tilted his head, smirking. He let the silence hang, then leaned closer. "That's noble. But let's be real. I have standards." The words dropped heavy, filling the space between them. A few diners shifted in their seats. The scrape of a chair echoed against the tiled floor. No one spoke. The tension clung to every breath in the room. Serene drew in air, slow and deep. "Standards are not the problem," she said. "Cruelty is. Ignorance is." Her voice wavered for only a second before steadying again. She looked him in the eyes, refusing to look away. Brandon chuckled, but the sound lacked warmth. "You can dress it up however you want. End of the day, you're complicated, and complicated isn't what I signed up for." Serene pressed her palms together on the table as though grounding herself. "Complicated," she repeated. "Life is complicated. People are complicated. That's not weakness. That's humanity." The air thickened. Every table nearby seemed to hold still waiting. Brandon shrugged, unimpressed. "Say what you want. I know what I want. And this isn't it." Serene's chest rose with another breath. She let the sting pass through her, not burying it, but not surrendering either. "My patients don't think I'm less," she said. "The children who trust me don't think I'm less. My worth is not determined by what you see missing." Her tone cut through the silence, strong as steel laid over fire. Brandon leaned back, folding his arms, his smirk thin and dismissive. "You sound proud, but pride doesn't change reality." Serene answered with calm finality. "Reality is this, and I am whole. Whether you accept it or not does not change the truth." The words landed heavy. Brandon's smirk faltered for a breath before returning. He shook his head, chuckled, and grabbed his phone. The café remained hushed, the weight of her words hanging like stone in the air. Harlan carried a tray of steaming mugs toward a table by the window. His steps were measured, his face calm, but his eyes kept sliding back to Serene and Brandon. He placed the drinks down, thanked the couple softly, and adjusted the tray against his arm. His role was simple tonight. Watch, listen, learn. Stay invisible. but every word from Brandon scraped against him like broken glass. He caught the way Serene sat taller, refusing to collapse under the weight of humiliation. He caught the smirk on Brandon's lips, the casual cruelty dripping from each sentence. Harlan clenched his jaw. His hand tightened around the tray until porcelain rattled. A woman at the table glanced at him, startled, and he forced his grip to loosen. "Stay in character," he told himself. "No one can know who you are. Not yet." He shifted toward another booth, wiping the surface with a cloth. His movements were automatic, but his focus never left the corner where Brandon towered in smugness, and Serene fought to keep her dignity intact. The plan had been clear when he entered the café. Blend in. Observe how staff treated customers, how customers treated staff. He had done this before at other branches, keeping his presence quiet, his identity hidden. But tonight felt different. Tonight, the test was no longer about service. It was about humanity. Anger swelled in his chest, hot and restless. He had built this company on the belief that kindness mattered as much as coffee. Seeing cruelty this close and seeing it aimed at someone already carrying more than her share tore at every boundary he had set for himself. He wiped the table harder than necessary, the cloth dragging across wood with force. His throat tightened. His hand trembled. Harlan forced a breath through his nose, sharp and steady. He told himself again to wait, to let the moment unfold, to learn what he needed before stepping in. But as Brandon's voice rose, mocking, and Serene's silence held like fragile glass, he felt the disguise crack inside him. One more insult and he knew he would break cover. The chair screeched against the floor. The sound was harsh, cutting through the café, louder than any laugh or cough. Heads turned again. Brandon stood sliding his phone into his pocket with a smirk. His voice carried as if he wanted the entire room to hear. "You've wasted my Friday night. Completely. I should have known better." Serene's fingers trembled against the rim of her glass. Her body wanted to shrink to vanish, but she forced herself upright. She lifted her chin, her words quiet but unshaken. "No. You didn't waste my time. You wasted your own." For a moment, the café froze. The words hung between them like steel. Brandon blinked, then let out a short, mocking laugh. "Cute, but let's not pretend. You're not what I want. You're not what anyone would want." Gasps stirred among the tables. A woman shook her head. A man muttered something sharp under his breath. Still, Brandon basked in the attention feeding on the discomfort. Serene's hand slipped from her glass to her lap. She folded her fingers together, hiding the tremor, holding on to dignity like a lifeline. "You may think that," she said, voice steady, "but your words don't change my worth." Brandon rolled his eyes. "Worth, keep telling yourself that." "I have standards." He pushed the chair back farther, letting it scrape once more, louder this time, like punctuation to his cruelty. He turned toward the door without another glance, leaving Serene sitting small in the shadow of his departure. The café air felt heavy, thick with judgment, not aimed at her, but at him. People whispered now, not in laughter, but in anger. Serene's cheeks burned, though not from shame. It was the burn of holding back tears, of forcing herself to stay upright when all she wanted was to collapse. She pressed her palms against her knees. Breathe. Hold. Do not break. At the counter, Harlan's grip on his tray grew white-knuckled. His chest heaved as though each insult had struck him personally. He told himself to stay undercover to wait, but the edge was thinning fast. Brandon strode toward the door, shoulders high, arrogance unshaken. But for everyone watching, the mask was gone. They saw not confidence, but cruelty. Not charm, but emptiness. And for Serene, though her hands still trembled, her voice had given her the last word. The café no longer laughed with him. It turned cold in his wake. Serene stayed in her seat after Brandon left. The echo of his footsteps still rang in her ears. She wrapped both hands around her glass of water, holding it as though it could anchor her in place. The condensation slipped against her palms. Cold seeped into her skin, but her body burned. She looked down at the liquid trembling inside the glass. It mirrored her unsteady fighting not to spill. Around her, whispers stirred again. Some voices carried sympathy. Others carried something worse, pity. She felt the weight of eyes resting on her measuring labeling, deciding. She forced herself to lift her head. Her eyes met theirs. Some quickly turned away, ashamed to be caught. Others offered small apologetic smiles. But she didn't want apologies. She didn't want pity. Her chest ached as the thought pressed forward, uninvited but sharp. Maybe I am too much. Maybe I am not enough. Maybe love was never meant for me. She blinked hard, driving the sting of tears back. She had fought too long, too many nights to let strangers see her break. Her lips moved silently around words she didn't speak. I am not broken. I am not broken. Yet the voice inside her answered with doubt. Then why does it hurt like this? Why does every door close the same way? The café around her resumed its rhythm, but she felt apart from it, isolated, as if she sat behind glass no one could see through. At the counter, Harlan wiped at the same spot on a table too many times. His jaw was rigid, his teeth pressed against his lip until he tasted iron. Every muscle urged him forward to say something to stop the cruelty from being the last word. He told himself to wait, to protect the disguise. But watching her now alone and fighting to breathe through humiliation made waiting unbearable. Serene traced a fingertip over the rim of her glass. The small circle was all she had to focus on. Round, endless, without escape. Her heart whispered again. What if this is all there is? What if I was never meant to be seen? Her eyes closed for a moment. She inhaled, sharp and steady, pulling herself back from the edge. Then the sound hit her. Heavy steps. The scrape of the door swinging open again. Brandon had returned his hand, reaching toward the table he had abandoned. His voice cut the air flat and careless. Forgot my wallet. Harlan could not hold back any longer. The sight of Brandon reaching for his wallet while Serene sat frozen in humiliation pushed him past the edge. He set his tray down on the nearest table. The cups rattled against the surface, but he didn't care. His hands were free now. He stepped closer, stopping at Serene's table. She looked up, startled by the shadow falling across her. Harlan didn't speak at first. He lifted his hands. His fingers moved with practiced care, each motion deliberate, steady. You deserve better. The words formed in the silent language that had become second nature to him. Serene's eyes widened. Her lips parted, but no sound came. Shock washed over her features, then something else, something softer. For the first time that night she saw someone standing with her, not against her. Her gaze flicked from his hands to his face, searching for mockery, for pity. She found none. Only conviction carved deep in his eyes. Her heart thudded. You know sign language, she asked quietly, voice trembling. Harlan gave a single nod. Enough to say what matters. The room, once filled with murmurs, fell into silence again. Diners leaned back, pretending not to watch, yet every eye was fixed on the stranger who had broken the unspoken rule of staying out of it. Serene blinked fast, her vision blurred by unshed tears. For so long she had carried her battles alone. To have someone step into the fire, even for a single moment, felt impossible. But here he was, a man she didn't know, a waiter she thought invisible, his hands telling her the words her heart had begged to hear. You deserve better, she repeated, tasting them as if they might vanish. Harlan's voice followed, low but firm. Yes, better than this, better than him, better than the way the world has treated you tonight. Serene's breath shook. She pressed her fingers against her lips, steadying herself. Something inside her cracked not with pain, but with relief. It was the first time in years she felt seen without conditions. And Brandon, wallet in hand, stopped mid-step at the sound of Harlan's voice. He turned, confusion flashing across his face as he realized the man in the apron had chosen sides. The café held still, waiting for what would come next. Serene stared at him, unable to look away from his hands. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. You know sign language." Harlan's expression was steady. He nodded once. Enough to say what matters. His hands moved again, slow and clear. I couldn't sit silent. Her breath caught. For years she had met silence that was heavy with dismissal, silence that pushed her out. This silence was different. This silence carried words built for her. Why she asked her throat tight. Why would you do that? You don't even know me. Harlan held her gaze. His voice was calm but edged with fire. I didn't need to know you to know what he said was wrong. Some things don't need permission to be answered. Serene blinked hard. Most people pretend they don't hear. They look away. Easier that way. I couldn't. Harlan's hands stilled at his sides. He leaned closer, lowering his tone. I've seen too much of that in my life. Too many people stepping aside, letting cruelty speak louder than kindness. I won't add to that silence. Serene pressed a palm against her chest as if holding her heartbeat steady. Her lips trembled. No one has ever stepped in like that. Not for me. His eyes softened. Then maybe tonight needed to be the first time. Her throat closed around the words she wanted to say. Gratitude. Relief. A strange disbelief that this moment was real. She swallowed it all, searching his face for proof, and all she found there was certainty. Serene searched his face, still trying to place him, his apron, his posture, the tray left behind. You're new here, aren't you? Her voice was soft, almost uncertain. Harlan hesitated. His hand touched the brim of his cap fingers, pressing into the fabric. For weeks he had promised himself he would not break cover too soon. But tonight the promise no longer mattered. He drew a breath, steady but heavy. Then he pulled the cap from his head. The motion was simple, yet it changed everything. My name is Harlan Cole, he said, each word measured. I am not a new hire. I am the CEO of this cafe chain. The cafe fell into silence. Conversations that had been whispering on the edges stopped cold. Forks hovered in midair. Chairs stilled. Every eye locked on him. Serene blinked confusion flashing across her face. Her lips parted as if to argue, but no words came. Brandon, standing a few feet away with his wallet in hand, froze in place. His smirk faltered, caught between disbelief and alarm. Harlan straightened the weight of truth now laid bare. I came here undercover, he continued. I wanted to see with my own eyes how people are treated in my cafes. Not as a name on a plaque, not as a face in a magazine, as a man with no power, no title. He looked at Serene, his gaze unwavering. And tonight, I saw more than service. I saw cruelty that should never belong in these walls. A murmur spread through the room, soft and uneasy. Serene's heart thudded in her chest. The man she thought was invisible was suddenly larger than life. A stranger who was not a stranger at all. You're the CEO, she whispered. Yes, Harlan said simply. He set the cap down on the table beside her. And I could not sit still while you were treated that way. The silence grew deeper, stretching tight across the cafe. For the first time since Brandon's arrival, Serene was no longer the one under every gaze. Brandon's mouth twisted into a crooked grin. He forced a laugh that came out too sharp. So, you're the boss. So what? Doesn't change anything. Harlan turned toward him, calm but unshaken. It changes everything. Because in my house, respect is not optional. It is the standard. And tonight, you failed it. Brandon shifted his wallet from one hand to the other. His smirk wavered, but he pushed it back on. I was just being honest. People should know the truth before wasting time. That's not disrespect. That's reality. Harlan's eyes narrowed. His voice did not rise, but it carried like iron. No. What you did was strip dignity from someone sitting across from you. You didn't speak truth. You spread poison. And in doing that, you didn't shame her, you shamed yourself. The café was silent. The scrape of a spoon, the rustle of a napkin, even the hum of the ceiling fan seemed to vanish. All that remained was the weight of Harlan's words. Brandon tried to laugh again, but it fell flat. He glanced around, looking for an ally. None met his eyes. A man near the counter crossed his arms, shaking his head. A young woman whispered to her friend, her expression tight with anger. Even the group who had laughed earlier sat stiff discomfort clear on their faces. Serene stayed still watching. Her heart pounded, but for the first time tonight it was not from shame. It was from the sudden shift, the power turning. Brandon lifted his chin, voice cracking with defensiveness. "You think I care what they think? You think I care about your little rules? I don't." Harlan's reply was steady. "Then you've already lost. Because anyone who walks into my cafe owes one thing: basic human respect. If you can't offer that, then you don't belong here." The words cut sharper than Brandon expected. His mouth opened, then closed. No answer came. Harlan's gaze held him there, pinning him with nothing but truth. You may carry your wallet, your pride, your excuses, but remember this: every person in this room just saw who you are, and they will not forget. The silence thickened. Eyes burned into Brandon from every direction. Not curious now, not mocking, condemning. Brandon's smirk broke at last. His shoulders stiffened, his throat bobbed as he swallowed. He turned without another word. The door opened, then slammed shut behind him. The sound echoed through the cafe, final and hollow. No one clapped, no one cheered, but the air shifted. Relief, vindication, quiet justice. Serene exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Her body trembled, but this time it was not from humiliation. It was from the weight lifting at last. And at the center stood Harlan Cap-Gone Disguise, abandoned a man who had chosen not to stay silent. For a moment, the cafe stayed hushed, the echo of the slammed door still in the air. Then Maris, the branch manager, stepped forward. Her silver hair caught the light as she approached Serene's table. She carried herself with calm authority, but her eyes were warm. She placed a hand gently on the back of Serene's chair. "Your meal tonight is free," she said. Her voice was firm, leaving no room for argument. Not as charity, as recognition. You should never have been treated that way. Serene blinked, startled. She had prepared herself for more pity, but there was none in Maris's words. Only respect. Her throat tightened. She tried to answer, but the words tangled. I don't know what to say." Maris gave a small smile. "You don't need to say anything. Just know that in this place you are welcome, and you are seen." The simplicity struck deeper than pity ever could. Serene's eyes shimmered. Her lips trembled with the weight of emotions she had fought all evening to contain. Finally, she nodded, whispering, "Thank you." Maris squeezed her shoulder once, then stepped back, letting the moment belong to her. The room felt different now. Not silent with judgment, but quiet with understanding. For the first time that night, Serene felt less alone. Serene sat back, her hands resting in her lap. The storm inside her had not fully passed, but the edges had softened. She looked at Harlan, her voice low. "Tonight, I almost lost my faith in people. I thought maybe kindness was gone." Harlan met her eyes without hesitation. His tone was steady, the words deliberate. "One cruel act does not define you. It does not define the world either, but one act of kindness can change the way we carry it." Serene breathed in, letting the words settle. "You really believe that?" "Yes," he said. "I've seen it. In my business. In my own life. Cruelty can wound, but kindness can rebuild." Her lips curved, faint at first, then fuller. A fragile smile, but real. I needed to hear that. Harlan returned the smile, a quiet one that spoke more than comfort. Then it was worth saying. For a moment, neither spoke. The cafe around them returned to its hum, but it no longer pressed down. It held them instead like a shelter after the storm. Serene's eyes glistened, but she no longer fought the feeling. Thank you. Not just for stepping in, for reminding me I still matter. Harlan leaned forward slightly. You always mattered. You just needed someone to reflect it back. She laid out a small laugh, soft and surprised. You sound sure of that. I am. His answer came without pause. Their smiles held across the table. Not wide, not loud, but enough. Enough to change the night from something broken into something whole again. Harlan let his eyes move slowly across the cafe. Every table was watching, though they tried to hide it. The weight of what had happened lingered in the air. His voice was calm, but it carried to every corner. In business, we can train skill. We can teach speed, accuracy, efficiency. But we cannot teach kindness. Kindness must be chosen, every day. The words sank in. No one shifted, no one interrupted. He looked back at Serene. What you faced tonight was not your fault. His cruelty belongs only to him. But your dignity, your courage, that is yours. No one can take that. Serene's eyes shone. She nodded, once a tear slipping free but turning into a smile. Kindness must be chosen, she repeated softly. Harlan smiled in return. Yes, and when people choose it, the world changes. Even if only for one person. Even if only for one night. The cafe seemed to breathe again, lighter now, as though the storm had finally passed. Serene drew in a steady breath. You turned the worst night into something I'll remember for a different reason. That Harlan said is what kindness can do. Their eyes held in quiet understanding. Warmth spread through the silence, steady and healing. For everyone, watching the lesson was simple, and it stayed with them long after the moment passed. The night that began with cruelty ended with dignity. One act of kindness turned silence into strength and gave hope back to someone who almost lost it. If this story touched, you remember kindness is never wasted. It may not change the whole world, but it can change one person's world completely. If you believe kindness should be shared, leave a comment that says, I support and pass this story forward. Because every voice, every choice, and every act of respect helps light the path for someone else.